Hi, my name is Allison McGowan, and I completed my behavior change project using the PEC system, the Picture Exchange Communication System, to increase manding for food and drink for the student that I worked with. I chose to use PECS because PECS is effective in increasing manding behaviors, as well as can be taught to parents to increase training in the home and also can increase vocalizations. For this study, I work with a student who I will call John, who is an 8-year-old boy diagnosed with autism, an intellectual disability, ataxic cerebral palsy, cortical vision impairment, and a sensory processing disorder. He attends a separate public school for students with severe and profound disabilities in the second grade right now. At school, he's observed to use a handful of signs like milk and more, as well as a few picture symbols and a few word approximations. However, in the home environment, he's not making any of those attempts to communicate at this time, the beginning of the project. He does also engage in some aggressive behaviors, including hitting others, kicking others, and hitting himself. And both his teachers at school and his parents use a behavior reinforcement protocol using a differential reinforcement of alternative behavior to work with John on these behaviors. The sessions that I did took place in John's home. John lives in an apartment and spends most of his time awake in the living room. John lives there with his mom, dad, brother, two sisters, and currently his aunt and uncle who are staying with them. So as I mentioned, I chose to focus on the PECS communication system to work with John, but I also wanted to increase eye contact. So my behavioral definition was manding for food and drink during meal times is defined as John placing an image representing food or drink on a sentence strip with the phrase "I want," and then immediately making eye contact with an adult he directs his request to for at least 1 second. I chose to do this to increase the eye contact piece because it is socially significant and to increase further communication with John as he gets older. So I started off with I used an ABAB design for this, and I took 5 days of baseline data where John did not engage in the target behavior at all, and then started the intervention for 5 more sessions. For the intervention, I would work with John, or another adult would work with John, his parents, for 1 minute where they would sit down at mealtime, break his food into bite-sized pieces, and ask him to use the sentence strip that said, "I want," with the pictures of food and drink below. At first, we would use physical prompting to put the picture onto the sentence strip and then have him look up at the adult by doing something like this, "Ask me," and he was really compliant with using that as a prompt to engage in eye contact. Once he did both those parts, the adult gave him a lot of verbal praise and patting on the back, and also gave him the food that he or drink that he had requested. After the first minute of the intervention was introduced to John, then the next 10 minutes were for data collection. And in that time, the adult or behavior therapist that was working with him collected data on all the times he independently engaged in both using the picture and making the eye contact. We did find a functional relation between using the intervention and engaging in the manding and eye contact behavior. During baseline, he engaged in it 0% of the time, but during the first intervention phase, John engaged in the target behavior independently, an average of 11.6% of the opportunities. Returning to baseline, it then decreased to 5%, and then back with the intervention, it's back up to 15% of the opportunities. So we did see a functional correlation between using the intervention or returning to baseline. Some of the limitations of the study were that with discussions with John's parents, we noted that there were many times that John was able to use the PEC symbols but didn't use eye contact. And in reflection of this, we had decided we would have, or we will in the future, collect data on times that John also just uses the PEC symbols because he was using that the majority of the time by the end of the study. They were thrilled to see that he was using that, but I also wanted to increase that eye contact. So in the future, I would separately collect data on times he used just the PECs or also the PECs and eye contact independently. The other limitation of this study was the time. With more time, I do feel that John will be increasing in his eye contact, and I think that the continued training of his parents will really increase the eye contact with using the PEC symbols as he communicates. Overall, the picture symbols with the eye contact improved during this behavior change project, so we were very excited to increase the target behavior. Thank you.